Hey everybody, Dave here, producer Dave here with Calvin Toloki. Glenn's on stage right now. You might hear him in the background, but we're here doing this recording. We talked about Bruce Ford live. I'm going to record some of these longer form conversations, not so much in the moment, but something we could play later on so you guys can hear, look back at some of these long-term facts, long-term strategies. And Calvin here, of course, if you know him from Rev Par Media, founded the great Instagram account Rev Problems, and we are here talking about social media, making sure we were talking with Bruce Ford about renovations and conversions, making sure that you guys are getting that messaging out there. Calvin, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be here.
So let's just jump right into it. Listen, social media, obviously huge, it's no secret. Everybody knows that, right? But not everybody, especially in the hotel space, really gets it and understands really how to use it and leverage it properly. So we talked to Bruce Ford during the keynote just, a few minutes ago live. We talked about all these renovations, all these brand conversions happening. But I don't think the messaging is getting out there as well as it possibly should. So how can hotels, best leverage social media to drive that business to them as we see things still come back?
Right. And that's really the key of what we do at our media, is making sure there's a return on investment. The issue that I've seen in my years of hospitality is that you handle it one of two ways. The hotel usually will just give it to somebody at the property. That person already has a job. They're a sales coordinator, they're a front desk manager, they marketing coordinator, but they're doing a bunch of different things. And when that full-time role gets busy, social media takes a back seat. Or we outsource to an agency. Many agencies don't have an intimate knowledge of the industry. They don't really understand the day-to-day, fluctuations of what's happening. It's, hey, we'll put out some nice content, we'll put out some pretty pictures. But, with my revenue background, my approach to it has always been, what are we doing with these people once we get them to follow us, right? How are we getting them engaged in our hotel story? And more importantly, how are we driving them to the website? If you've got, a full of people, but we're not driving them to the website and not booking rooms, it's kind of, what's the point of that?
Right.
Of that page. And, our approach, again, being revenue manager, you're constantly thinking 30, 60, 90 days, a year out.
Yep.
It's, what type of events are we promoting? Summer's coming up. I have clients in New York City that just built terrace rooms. So it's probably still freezing cold in New York right now. Nobody's thinking about hanging out in the terrace and champagne and all of those things right now. But when spring starts to hit here in another couple of weeks, we're already promoting that. We've already got that in the content calendar spaced out every few weeks. Hey, we've got brand new terrace rooms, because if you're cold now and you're thinking about your summertime trip to New York City, you already are starting to think, hey, where do I want to stay? What do I want that room to look like? You don't do it when summer comes, because then it's already late. You've missed that booking window. And that's, what we do, bringing that revenue mindset, that hospitality knowledge to social media. And that's how you bridge the gap.
So what would you say for hoteliers, what really connects, right? Because I think a lot of Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts, they do a lot of generic posting, right? There would be their local area or their random rooms. And again, not every hotel, in fact, most hotels are not quote unquote Instagram, right? They're not, most hotels don't have the amazing beachside view or don't have that amazing city view. So how do hotels that don't necessarily have that Instagrammable section, market themselves? What should hoteliers be focusing on? What is connecting with people as they try to get, impressions and engagements on their social channels?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and that's something I get quite a bit, because you have hotels that just have a great story. If you're on the beach in Laguna or something like that, you don't really have to work hard to kind of sell your attributes. You've got a Hampton Inn near the airport. That's much tougher to sell, right? It's not sexy for Instagram, but we've all have people. We all have stories. We all have people in our hotels that are worth talking about.
Yeah.
You've got a employee of the month, a great person. Let's say, for example, that person's at the front desk. They're constantly being mentioned on TripAdvisor. They're constantly doing well in that regard. Post about them on your social media. That gives someone who's following your account a face to connect with.
No.
And now imagine they're surprised when they get checked in by that person. Like, oh, hey, I saw you on Instagram. I saw you on Facebook. You do really well. Now they know that they're getting checked in by the best that, the property has to offer. They've given them someone to connect with. And that's what this is all about. At the end of the day, your social media is just an extension of the service that, you know, you want them to get at the hotel.
Right. Yeah. Now, how do you measure? You were talking about ROI, right? How do you measure that? You know, obviously, someone that sees something on Instagram, they may not click through. They may not even be traveling to that area anytime soon. So, yes, the impression gets out there, but they're not clicking and booking. So, you know, if a hotelier had a question, whether it be an owner or a general manager, an asset manager, or managing company, you know, and they say, how do you measure that return? How can you bring value to my property or to my asset? How do you measure that?
Well, ultimately, it's going to be visits to your website. That's, I think, is the bottom of that funnel, right? It's going to start with reach, and how many people is this content getting out to? Are we using the right hashtags? Are we posting at the right time? Are we posting content that our demographic, our audience, our guests are going to want to see? So it all starts with understanding who those people are. Who are your guests? Are your guests family travelers? Or are they predominantly male or female? Where they're coming from? Those are the things you want to understand. So then once I know who you are, what you like, it's easier to post. So it's going to start with the reach. How many people are we reaching? And then, of course, the rest of that engagement funnel, impressions, comments, shares, bookmarks, all of these things we can track to see the success of individual content, and then pivot. If we're posting a lot of video, but videos aren't really getting a lot of views, but our static posts are, then we pivot to that. So we, being a data nerd, being somebody who spent so many years in revenue and analytics, my mind just works that way. There's no point of, you know, posting something. It might look like a pretty picture, but if it didn't reach the people and if it wasn't engaged with, you know, consistently, then there's no point in continuing with that. But ultimately, what we do, again, as a revenue guy, it's about how many people are we driving to your website. And that's something I track. Nobody would be surprised. I have a Google sheet. I've got analytics set up every single month. We look at all of these things, you know, how much reach did we get average per post, and all of these things. And it comes down to what was the hotel ADR, what was our conversion rate on the website, and then we mirror that on our on social media. So for example, most of my clients right now are seeing an average of about 300 visits to the website every single month. Usually somewhere between 40 to 60% of those are going directly to the Book Now page.
Okay.
So then we take that number and just use whatever we have from their digital marketing side. If we're not doing it personally, they have a digital marketing team. So if their conversions usually average somewhere between 1% and 2% for the industry. So we take it at 1.5. I take that 1.5% conversion, multiplied by that 50% that went to Book Now, and we can estimate how much revenue we brought in through Instagram for that month.
Love it. So what about the changing times, right? Social media especially is always redeveloping itself, whether it be a different platform or a different trend or a different, you know, right now it's TikTok and Reels, but you know, tomorrow it could be something completely different.
Yeah.
How can hoteliers really stay on top of those changing trends to make sure they're not missing opportunities?
Yeah, and it's tough. And again, when you don't have someone who's just dedicated to this, you know, again, many properties that we work with, they have a marketing coordinator.
Right.
But that person, so social media falls under that person, but they've also got to set up for the event that night. They've got to, you know, do all these other things. And if you're not on top of it, if you're not somebody who's consistently on social media looking at those things, it can be difficult. You're going to miss a trend, or you might post it late, which sometimes is worse because it's like, man, that was cool 2 months ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what's great about me and my team is that obviously I'm a creator. So I'm on Instagram every day, you know, so I see the trends. I participate in the trends. I'm making things. I also have a team that's very diverse. We have a young lady specifically. She's a Gen Zer. She's still in college, you know, so it helps me too because she's seeing other trends and participating in things that may not be on my feed because you know, she's a young female. I'm an older male, right? So we're looking at different things. So she brings a completely different perspective,
Right.
whether it be through captions and trends and things like that. And it's really fun for me because I learn from her, and the other ladies on my team because they're all of different age ranges and we all see things different way. I don't want to spill too many beans, but for one of my properties, we're working on something involving Taylor Swift's new album,
Right.
you know, coming out in April. That's not something I would have thought of myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
But having a team that's diverse and young and hip on different trends helps us deliver for our clients in a way that's they won't be able to do for themselves because this is all we do. It's all we.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, listen, the last question I have for you, you know, again, I think sometimes, especially in hotels, people think, especially owners, asset managers, it gets pushed to the side to a
Yep.
degree, right? Because there's so many things going on all the time. And
Absolutely.
maybe that ROI is a little bit harder to qualify.
That's true.
But, how important is it for hotels? I guess maybe the question for you coming as a revenue guy, what is some tangible numbers that you might see an increase, whether it be bookings, whether it be revenue, when you have a proper social media presence versus ones that don't?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, that's really the nitty gritty of what I do and why I formed this agency is, I've worked at hotels that had Instagram accounts with large followings and minuscule engagement. And, as a revenue manager, it's disappointing because you have 20, 30,000 people on a page, but you can't really reach them because it's at that page. What we're doing isn't engaging to them.
Right.
Right. So, to put it another way, good thing some people already understand that that you need your website, you need email marketing. Look at social media as part of that same funnel. Because if you had an email list of 20,000 people and only 0.1% of them are opening the email, you would know you had a problem.
Right.
That problem is either you've got the wrong people here, they're not really interested in your hotel, or what we're sending out to them isn't stuff that they're interested in. But you know that there's a disconnect there somewhere. Same thing with your website. You get an 18,000 visitors a month, and you're only converting at 0.1%. Something's wrong. Something's wrong with that site. We're not driving them to their photography's off. Maybe it's loading slow. Your SEO, you would know those things already because we've been doing that for so long.
Right.
Social media, overall, it's still pretty much in its infancy. It's still growing in a lot of ways. Like you said, we have not yet reached the point where everybody knows what's going to happen 2 months from now. It could be a completely new app that comes out that's going to take over, and we don't have that knowledge yet that this is something that is just as powerful as all of those other things we've already been doing for decades.
Right.
And again, the way we approach it is with, yes, we're going to have the style, we're going to have the creativity. We've got an in-house photographer and a web designer. She does logos and all this. So it's going to look good, but we bring substance to that style. It's not just a pretty picture on your feed. Anybody can do that. With the way we approach it and being able to speak to you, look, we analyze every single post. And ultimately, like I said, when we get to the bottom of that funnel is, are we pushing people to your website?
Right.
And I can confidently say, if we're pushing 60% of our links to your Book Now page, people are making reservations.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And listen, guys, think about it, right? If you're getting people to your direct channels, right, it's a lower cost for you. You're not having to rely on the OTA, which is a higher margin channel, guys. So listen, make sure you're not forgetting about your social media channels. However you want to do it, just make sure it's taken care of. But of course, if you want some help, reach out to Calvin at RevPar Media. Calvin, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely.
All right.
Great to be here.
Thank you all. We have more Click content coming to you both live and, of course, watch out for these recordings.